Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Pop Culture Galaxy podcast. I'm Mark Bridge and I'm here with Zach Worsner.
That's me.
Now, I gotta say something about technology for a second. Just a little bit. Technology is great. It really helps us out in a time of need. It fills a spot in our lives that have been missing for a very long time. And when it works, it's like the best thing in the world, right? It's the best thing, right? When we didn't have technology, life was hard, but it was, we kind of lived through it. We had the expectation that we had to work a little bit harder for what we needed. But the thing that technology does now is that we are dependent on it now. So when it fails, when technology fails us, it it stings. It stings. So we recorded an almost 2 hour podcast on Doctor No. So this is our retrospect of the uh, James Bond franchise. For the next 24 weeks or so, we'll be delving into each film at a time and talking about the influences in and reviewing what we liked, what we didn't like, and its impact on the world. That's what this podcast is about. But we recorded almost 2 hours on Doctor No. Once that was done, and I'm ready to sort of work with it to put it on YouTube, the video was corrupted. I tried my best to fix it, tried to Google it, how I could fix it, and didn't work. So it's like, okay, all that good stuff we talked about Dr. No, like how do we reproduce that organically? It may never happen, but I couldn't just because I was so tempted, like, screw it, let's just do From Russia with Love, and then maybe down the line we'll come back to Doctor No. But I was like, it's just for prosperity's sake. When you go on the channel, I don't want you to start because it'd be like, why did they start with From Russia with Love, right? So I was like, let's just bite the bullet. Let's just do it again. Screw it. It's not a bad movie, so we could talk about it. Um,
Yeah,
so
we'll do it live.
yeah, fuck it. We'll do it live.
As a stupid man once said,
Yeah.
we'll do it live. Ah!
So we're back at it once again. We're gonna talk about Doctor No. Maybe we'll talk about stuff we didn't get a chance to talk about before. Who knows? But yeah. So here we are, back at it again. We're going to review the very first James Bond film. Well, sorry, the very first Broccoli production James Bond film. Because there have been a couple before. There've been the TV movie Casino Royale, plus the comedy Casino Royale with what's his name?
Well, that wasn't until later.
That came after. You sure?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was done as a response to the success of the
Uh,
007 movies.
right. Um, and yeah, so it was a TV movie. That was it, right? Before,
Yeah,
right? So
there was Ian Fleming had been working with a screenwriter to make a James Bond movie, an original movie,
mm-hmm.
not based on any of the books. But after that fell through, that wound up being adapted into Thunderball, which is what led to a big whole mess of
All right,
nonsense that we'll get to when we talk about Thunderball.
right.
And if and when we talk about Never Say Never Again, we'll see.
Eh. It's not in my collection, so
You can skip it.
yeah, it's not in my collection. But hey, we could probably talk. We'll probably talk about it adjacent to Thunderball.
Adjacent to Octopussy.
Oh, okay.
Well, Octopussy is when they came out side by side.
Well, no, just because it's a remake. It's basically a remake of Thunderball.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
probably best to talk about it in that context.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there. We got to go to Jamaica first.
Yeah. So, some more backstory on James Bond, written by Ian Fleming, who we mentioned. He used to be in the military, in the Navy.
Yeah.
Not sure if he was in the like the secret agency department or anything like that, but used to be around that. And he wrote the books in Jamaica. At least one of them. At least one of them. There have been 14 of them. Two of them are series of short stories. Um, and Doctor No is the sixth book. Um, so it being set in Jamaica and he wrote in Jamaica, it's like the best sort of organic first movie. And I know you mentioned this in the last podcast. I guess the advantage of doing the second time, we can actually just bring up certain things. One of the reasons they probably chose this is because it's a low budget movie. It was the first film James Bond, so of course they're gonna start off low. You know, rarely have they start off big with franchise. Rarely. I mean, sometimes
This
they
is
do.
the Clerks of James Bond movies.
Right. So, you know, it was one location in that it's one country. It's
Yeah.
before James Bond went global and started spanning like four locations in one movie.
Yeah, I think they basically had their pick of what they wanted, which book they wanted to do, except for Casino Royale, whose rights were tied up elsewhere.
Mm,
And they chose Doctor No because, for the most part, it's just set in Jamaica,
yeah.
and they wouldn't have to bring their their crews, you know, to a bunch of different countries. It's like, oh, we can just set up shop in Jamaica.
Mm,
We don't have to do a lot of work to make this look picturesque because it's already a gorgeous country.
yep.
Um, we can, yeah, we can just do it kind of ad hoc on the spot, and there's never going to be a spot that doesn't look like it was meant to be on film.
Mm. Yeah, and one of the cool things about it is I'm from Jamaica. I grew up in Jamaica half my life. um, this was shot, I want to say, in the 60s, probably 61, early 62. Um, and Jamaica got its independence uh, from Britain the same year, in August. So the movie was a reflection of Jamaica under the British rule. And it was just funny because a lot of scenes that were shot in this film, I recognized them. Like, for instance, the airport. The airport has been a big staple of my life, and just looking at it through the eyes of of 1962 is just like weird. And then certain scenes, I was like, oh my god, I used to pass that place all the time, and just seeing how it looked in this gorgeously shot movie. You know, it was just like, wow. You know, it's one of those things where if you do want to, and I think for the most part, James Bond, the films, subsequent films, is like a snapshot of the time period that it takes place in. You know, from 60s to the 70s, the 80s, 90s. Yeah, 90s where it was just more about cinematics and not really capturing a time period.
Well, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of capturing the time period and the location.
Right.
Wherever they are, you can see a lot of where the culture was at. Sometimes they ham it up
Yeah.
and just focus on whatever's most commercial or most recognizable. But it's cool when, I think a big part of the appeal of the James Bond series is that you get to go to different exotic places without having to buy a plane ticket,
Right.
just a movie ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, around the 60s, 70s, and 80s is when they really captured, a snapshot of the time. So then, so the how all of this came to be, basically Harry Saltzman, I think his name is. He had the rights. He was trying to get a James Bond movie made, and so did Albert Broccoli, Cubby Broccoli, as they call him. He also wanted to get it made, but Harry had sort of the rights at the time, I think. And then two of them met up and decided to collaborate. They created Eon Entertainment, which does not stand for everything or nothing. So they started production. got everything together. Casting, one of the casting that they had in mind was Cary Grant for James Bond, because I think uh, Cary Grant was Albert's friend, but Cary Grant was a huge star back then, and he's not going to sign up for multiple pictures. They wanted to have a franchise going, and uh, they would have to go through the process of recasting every time if they went with like big names, especially Cary Grant. Um, so through mutual acquaintances, they found Sean Connery, and
It's funny, like thinking about, oh, he didn't want to sign up for a 6 picture deal
uh-huh.
when that was it's funny they would sign up for contracts with studios
Yep, yep.
rather than specific franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that kind of went away, after in the '60s and beyond, where it
Mm-hmm.
was really movie to movie,
Yeah.
with agents acting as the gatekeepers to protect their clients.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we've seen that change back in a way with the superhero movies right
Yep.
now, with the shared
Yeah.
universes. Was it Samuel L. Jackson signed what, a 9 picture
Nine
deal?
picture. Yep. Yep.
And I think Sebastian Stan also signed a 9 picture deal. Um, so they're locked in a
Yeah.
way that Hollywood stars haven't been locked in for a while.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
not as locked in because they can do other movies. It's just that
that's true.
uh,
If Marvel calls, they have
they
to
have to
answer.
answer. Yeah. So, um, I don't. I suspect they'll never be as locked in as old Hollywood anymore.
No.
Um, which is funny enough that the porn industry adapted that. uh,
Well,
yeah,
James Bond,
yeah,
James Bond's favorite films.
yeah. So, yeah. So they got Sean Connery.
Some
So
unknown former bodybuilder,
yeah.
not even British, and he winds up being an icon.
So the another casting which is wound up being sort of iconic is Ursula Andress.
Well,
Uh,
like Ursula Undress,
yeah.
which I did not make up. That's like everywhere. There, you watch the special features, they're like drooling over her. It's pretty gross and
Yeah.
awesome.
Um, you have Joseph Weissman. He plays M, right?
No,
No, Doctor No.
Bernard
Sorry,
Lee.
Doctor No is Joseph Weissman. Bernard Lee and Lois Maxwell plays Miss Moneypenny, who they actually wanted her to play Trench at the time. Sylvia Trench, but she didn't
She
want
didn't
to
want to do a naked scene.
do the whole naked scene, so they got Eunice Grayson, or Gayson. But so one of the things about James Bond that is,
Oh, and Jack Lord from Hawaii Five O as Felix, the first Felix.
right. Um, and you know what's funny? So I don't think was Felix in the Pierce Brosnan movies,
No,
right? So
he was not in those movies because there is a shared continuity from Doctor No to Die Another Day, and he retires and then gets his leg bit off
oh
by
yeah,
a shark in License to
yeah,
Kill.
yeah,
Spoiler for License to Kill.
yeah, right. So I didn't know that Felix was a staple. The first time I saw Felix was uh, in Casino Royale, played
Yeah,
by Wright,
uh, Jeffrey Wright.
Jeffrey Wright. Um, and then what's funny is because I never usually see, other than like say M or a Moneypenny, you don't really see other recurring characters. Oh yeah, and Q of course, but then they brought Jeffrey Wright back for was he in Quantum?
Yep.
Yeah, he was in Quantum and he was also in Skyfall, right?
He's mentioned
In, in
in he's mentioned in
yeah.
Skyfall and Spectre, but I don't think he makes a physical appearance in either.
Right. So I was like, wow, this Felix character. And then when I did rewatches of the old movies, I was like, oh, Felix exists. I was like, oh, it's a staple. All right, cool, cool, cool,
Oh yeah.
cool. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And did we mention? Yo, Q wasn't in Doctor No. There was no Q yet.
Q is in Doctor No, but you don't know it because it's not the same actor and he's not called Q.
All right.
He's the guy who gives Bond his new gun.
Oh, right.
And they call him Boothroyd, which
Yeah.
is the character's real name.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole story is a combination of real life and fiction. So, as we mentioned before, Doctor No is the sixth book,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and the book before that is From Russia with Love.
Right.
That the book ends with a cliffhanger ending with Bond shot,
Ah.
because something about the gun that he had being a Beretta ladies' pistol,
Mm-hmm.
which Ian Fleming came up with because he wanted it to not interfere with the cut of his suit.
Right.
Um, and this guy named Boothroyd
Mm-hmm.
wrote into Ian Fleming, wrote him a letter saying like he shouldn't be wearing that kind of gun. He's supposed to be wearing a big manly gun. He should have a 44 Magnum. But if you want him to have a smaller gun that won't mess with his the cut of his suit, give him a Walther PPK.
Yeah.
I still think he should have a 44 Magnum, but I think that you can find a good compromise
Mm-hmm.
with the PPK.
Right.
And Ian Fleming read it and was like, by Jove, he's right. And so he wrote him getting injured because of his gun into From Russia with Love, and then wrote Dr. No with him getting this new gun,
Yeah. Yeah. I was.
which he would keep forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew there was some story behind the whole Breda to PPK thing. So I was like, what was that story again? But thanks for reminding me. It was okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Boothroyd pops up in the beginning of Dr. No just to give him that gun.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no fancy gadgets or anything. But then later, one movie on, we'd get the proper introduction of Q, played by a new actor, and, history would be made.
Right. All right. So, we had our actors, lined out actors which would play these roles for a while, and now it was time for our director. And the director they got was Terrence Young.
Oh yeah.
And when you see Terrence Young, first of all, if you look at Christopher Nolan now, where he wears his suits, I wonder if he's inspired by Terrence Young. Well, I mean, other directors wear suits too. I think Alfred Hitchcock wore suits.
Paul Feig.
Yeah. But Christopher Nolan, who's just a big James Bond fan, I wouldn't put past him that he was influenced by Terrence Young. This is a director that, in a time where very few directors put stamps on movies, movies were really made by committees. Once in a while you would have a director that comes out and sort of like buck the trend. I think Orson Welles is one of them. But like for the most part, you look at movies prior to the 60s, you have a similar canvas.
Yeah, which is a big part of why directors were able to make like 2 or 3 or 4 movies in a year, because they basically were just there to control the set and call the shots.
Yeah.
Which, funny, is a little bit like the Marvel template now, where they're made by the producers and the director's there to basically just control the set and say cut.
Yep.
For better or worse sometimes, and we've seen directors in this era make these movies their own.
Yep.
James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy, and we've seen, and going back, we saw directors have an identifiable style, like we're about to see with Terrence Young.
Yep. So one of the things that I noted while I was watching this movie, it was like, yo, the camera work on this is amazing. Like, the camera work is so amazing. You see stuff now, presently, with some of the camera movements that are like, you're accept it now because it's like, of course, technology is good enough for you to pull off those camera moves. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? When you go to Dr. No, which was filmed in the 60s, you're like, he's doing these stuff with the camera, and those cameras were bigger, much bigger back then. You know what I mean? And it's like you're using film, so you can't really make a mistake because you're wasting film.
And they had like no budget. They had about $1 million to spend.
Right.
And how much of that do you think went just to the film?
Right.
Like I don't know. I'm sure someone knows, but
Yeah.
I do not know. But probably more than we would think. Like,
Like.
oh, your budget is this, and this much goes to film, then your budget's really
Mm,
only this.
mm-hmm.
But
Like.
another big thing that works with the camera movement in that movie,
Mm-hmm.
in Doctor No, is the aspect ratio,
Yes. Uh-huh.
which is as soon as anyone watches it, it's very
Mm-hmm.
atypical.
Yeah.
It's not completely 4:3 like full screen
Mm-hmm.
style,
Mm-hmm.
but it is very narrow to the point where if you're watching it on a 16:9 TV,
Mm-hmm.
you've got bars on the side,
Yes. Yeah. I,
which you just never see.
and at first I was like, wait, did something happen with my television? What's going on? Why did? But yeah, it's not quite 1/8, but it's not 4:3 either. It's somewhere in between. And I chalked that up to which I mentioned in the first time we tried to record this. Like, it's their version of, like, it's not a big budget movie. It's not CinemaScope. It wasn't shot in CinemaScope, so it's not an event movie. It's one of those movies that nowadays, like, for instance, interestingly enough, John Wick 3, right? John Wick 3 is like the pinnacle of the that franchise right now. It's right at that moment where Fast and the Furious was, where it moved from this sort of like niche August summer blockbuster to now we're debuting in May and April. This is a tentpole franchise. Um, John Wick 1 was a relatively cheap movie to where the grosses, the entire gross was like 40 something
Yep.
million.
But the budget was only 20, so it was a
Yeah,
nice little profit.
right? And John Wick 3 made that in one weekend.
John Wick 3 made more than in its opening weekend made more than the opening weekends of John Wick 1 and 2 combined.
Yeah, right? Um so you go so I say that to say, like, John Wick was, you could tell some of the cheating. If you go back to John Wick, even though it's a good movie, I love it. I don't know what you think about John Wick 1.
I haven't seen part 3 yet, but I think 1 is my favorite.
Yeah.
There are things that I really like in 2, and a lot of the action is better in 2,
Mhm.
but there's something about part 1
Right.
and its action that I like more than part 2.
But if you go back to John Wick 1, especially after seeing 3, you can definitely tell scale wise
Oh
the
yeah.
budget, right? So I want to say that was the same thing with Doctor No. Doctor No would be the equivalent to like a John Wick 1, where it's like produced on a low budget. It's not very known, but it's something in it that will get audiences interested in seeing that movie. So it wasn't done in CinemaScope because it's not their event movie yet. Not yet, anyway.
But also, like, to its credit, it really takes, they shot it in that aspect ratio, that magical weird aspect ratio,
Mm-hmm.
because it was probably the cheapest that they could get. But it really does feel like the movie is built around it.
Yep.
There's a lot of shots in it that just wouldn't work in the CinemaScope super wide.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, there's a set when what's his face goes and talks to Dr. No, and it's that set that's just like a stark square room with a
Right.
circle on the ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
the hole cut into the ceiling with bars, and it's a very vertical shot. It's so much vertical space
Mm-hmm.
that would have to be zoomed way out
Mm-hmm.
in full widescreen
Yep.
in order to get that same effect.
Mm-hmm.
And like it does a lot with close-ups that gets a lot closer than you could otherwise get. And also, like, there's a scene where he climbs into a ventilation duct.
Yeah.
And in any movie, whenever someone climbs into a ventilation duct, it's always, it's almost like framed to the aspect ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Like Die Hard, it's like a very wide slit.
Mm-hmm.
And in Doctor No, the ventilation duct is shaped like a square
Mm-hmm.
because that's the film.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but it definitely feels like it works in that respect. It's shot exceptionally well.
Yeah. Another thing too, maybe it was because it was of the sort of transfer they did, like Glory Productions. They did the remaster for the Blu-ray. but they worked directly with the negatives, so it really informed them in terms of colors and stuff like that. But the transfer they did for the Blu-ray was just wow. It's like maybe it was a representation of what it looked like the first time people saw it in theaters. But yeah, the cinematography, the camera work, all of that is just beautiful. Um,
Yeah. I mean, this is the era before color correction.
mm,
Like, but how are you going to improve on Jamaica?
exactly.
Like, what are you going to saturate the colors and make it look like, CSI Miami? Like, you're not going to make it look better.
Right.
And I like CSI Miami. That was not meant to be a jab, but there are so many shots, especially outside, where they have someone talking and behind them is the horizon line, because they're pointed out to the water, and there's like the blue cloudless sky and the blue ocean and just a line between them separating them, and it just looks amazing. That whether you're shooting it in 1962 or you're shooting it right now, any director who goes out there goes, "Oh my God, we need this shot.
Yeah, obviously.
We need to see that," because
there's
there
no
aren't there's no place like Jamaica,
yeah,
right?
there's no point shooting in Jamaica if you're not gonna do that, right?
Right.
Right.
Like, you want to go to the beach? Nah.
So Terrence Young, one of the other things that he brought to the table was a lot of people pretty much said, "Hey, he's a template for James Bond." He
Oh
was,
yeah.
he's debonair. They said if they could have it their way, they would have made him play James Bond.
Yeah, Peter Hunt said that. He said, "My dream, James Bond." Peter Hunt started out as the editor, and then worked his way up to second unit, and then wound up directing one of the greatest Bond movies ever, on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Not the porn version, on Her Majesty's Secret Cervix. That's a different, whole other thing. Oh boy, I do not put that on my resume anymore. But Peter Hunt said that his dream James Bond movie would be him directing Terrence Young in the role. And somewhere, I'm sure that there's some alternate dimension where that exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's probably awesome. Terrence Young is the guy who trained Sean Connery into being James Bond.
Yep.
Which is a big part of Sean Connery's characterization in the role, and that something that we would see again with Daniel Craig, and that he's just like this brutish, thuggish guy who looks like he's more attuned to bar fights than martinis.
Yep.
But who was trained to be he got My Fair Lady'd. And that's why he's James Bond. Other Bonds, that's like the sliding scale that a Bond has to fall into, whether they're like thuggish and brutish, like Craig and Connery, or suave and cute, like Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan. But like they all have different places on that sliding scale. But Sean Connery's definitely set it up, established the precedent with Bond as a character who embodies both sides of that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And whether which side of it is the job and which side of it is his natural state depends on the actor. That's Bond.
Yeah. So this being the first movie, you get to meet all the sort of classic things about Bond in this movie, one of which is his appetite for the ladies.
Babes!
And again, going back to how beautifully shot this movie is.
Yeah.
The women
Whoa.
are not exempt from that beauty.
No way, no how.
You got Sylvia Trench. You have what was the name of the photographer again? The one who was spying.
She had a funny name, I
Yeah.
remember.
And actually, the actor who played her, she was originally cast for something else. I think she was cast for the other lady that had to that was seducing Bond, like wanted to have him killed or something like that. That wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, she was cast for that, but she was like, no, she didn't want. Her in Jamaica is pretty conservative in Jamaica, and she didn't want to
Right.
do all of that stuff. So they said, all right, we'll make you play the photographer, um, and she was the actor who played her was
Marguerite
yeah
Loirs.
yeah, she's a former Miss Jamaica, so she was a model back then, and a pageant queen, beauty queen. Um, so that's one. And of course, the one that actually, who was the other one who was trying to betray him, who was setting him up?
That's Zena Marshall as Miss Taro.
Yeah, yeah, Miss Taro, which they actually put makeup on her to look Asian, um, which is
Which
not.
is
It
she's oh, okay, because I was looking because she was born in Kenya,
right.
but her family was English and French.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, whoa, she's like Obama.
Yeah.
But no, not
Um,
really.
so you had Miss Taro, Sylvia Trench, the photograph lady, which he didn't really seduce, but I'm sure he
Yeah,
would
nah.
have.
He was like, nah, I'm spent, honey. It's been a
uh,
long day for old 007. That's
uh,
why I've only got two O's.
but
Uh,
then, of course, you had the main Bond girl, which, funny enough, only shows up in the third act of the movie, which is like weird. Um, Ursula, who plays Honey Rider.
it's a weirdly structured film. It's like I mean, some of my favorite movies are like this, where it starts out one way, and the twist is that it's something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we talked about in our Lost episode
Mm-hmm.
was that the secret to James Bond movies, everyone calls them spy movies, but they're really not spy movies.
Mm-hmm.
They're action adventure movies
Right.
that just happen to star spy
Yeah.
characters. Um, there are a few Bond movies that could classify as spy movies, like The Living Daylights. Maybe The World Is Not Enough.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Casino Royale. That are spy movies, but for the most part, they are action adventure movies. They're taking you to exotic places and then blowing them up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And along the way, Bond kills a bunch of people and sleeps with a bunch of people. Sometimes at the same time. Sometimes he kills the people he sleeps with.
Yeah.
One time he kisses a person after she's dead. Very hot in like a Ted Bundy kind of way. But no, it's a romantic goodbye. It's very important. But he, the Steven Spielberg made Indiana Jones because he said it was the closest that he'd ever get to doing a James Bond movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And no one would ever call Indiana Jones a spy movie.
Right.
So that's like the secret. And Doctor No, the first half, even a little bit more, is like a spy movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a detective movie.
Yep.
Yeah, even more than a spy movie. It's like a police procedural where Bond is just like, I'm here. I'm looking for people.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this person? You don't know? I'm going to kill you. Where is this person? You don't know? Well, I'm going to make out with you. And then it's going to, fade to black, and then we'll be shirtless.
Yeah.
And then when he finds out where to go, he and Quarrel go there, and it becomes just a completely different movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're on the beach, and they meet this gorgeous babe, and it's like an action-adventure romance. Then, it's R.I.P. Quarrel. And then they go to the base, and it's like a space age 60s crazy plastic world with Dr. No wears his crazy suits.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, what movie is this?
Yeah.
What were we watching? Like, there's not a line where you go, oh, this is the progression of the movie. It's a straight line, and then it just goes nuts.
Yeah, which is like a staple of most of the Bond movies, right? Where it's like the end is like a big set piece in a sort of lair, which I don't think none of the Craig movies did that, right? There's no
They did a
lair,
little bit of it in Spectre
right?
when they go, and he's like, "Do you want to see my meteorite, Mr. Bond?" And they're like, "No, I don't want to see your freaking meteorite." Ugh!
So it's like, but that was one of the things that we, when a new James Bond movie came out, we would look forward to. I wonder what the the villain's lair would
Yeah,
look like.
because it's definitely a pattern, an archetype,
Mm-hmm.
what is it, a formula.
Mm-hmm.
But the formula is that we do this, and then something crazy happens,
Mm-hmm.
and that something crazy happens is always like some game-changing action set piece
Mm-hmm.
that influences the way people make movies for the next decade.
Yeah.
And that's a formula that is fresh every time because the formula is breaking the mold.
Yep.
It's like every movie, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to break the mold at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like a contradiction in terms, but that's why James Bond has existed for almost 60 years now.
Yep. 60 years and 24 films.
Yeah.
And 4 actors. Four? Five,
Six.
six, six. um, so let's back up a little bit to the introduction of Honey Rider. Her coming, her coming up out of the water. Iconic scene.
Oh,
Her
yeah.
standing up straight. Her outfit, her bikini, iconic to where they played homage to that scene in Die Another Day
With Halle Berry
with Halle
in her
Berry.
orange bikini.
Yeah. So yeah, and then even when you can people make that a poster all the time, that scene where she's standing up straight with a knife on her side, which, is there a narrative reason why she's has that on or whatever? I don't know, maybe.
I think because it looks cool.
Yeah, right.
I mean, a girl's got to protect herself.
Yeah. And
Why
then
not with like a freaking gigantic, awesome knife?
yeah, and then I remember we were talking about this on our last episode where we're saying about Bond girls. Usually, the Bond girls are introduced fairly earlier in the film and are integral to the plot. He just meets this random chick on the beach, and then all of a sudden, she's part of the plot.
Yeah.
I know you're.
Well, she's not though. She's just there. She
Yeah.
has nothing to do in the story.
Yeah, right. I know you were
At
saying
all.
something in maybe in the books that she has more of a link in it, or was she just.
There is something in the book. She has a little bit more of a role to play. Oh no, it explains why she's so dumb.
All right.
Like, cause she, there is a fetish of like guys liking girls who are just like super dumb. That's why like baby talk is sexy, allegedly. Not confessing that I find baby talk sexy. It's nobody's business, okay? But, like she's dumb. She's dumb in this movie. She's just like, oh, I don't know, Bond. I think it's definitely a dragon.
Oh yeah.
Like, dude, it's not a dragon. Even Quarrel's like, okay, like I'm super scared right now, but I don't think it's a dragon. And then, oh, now I'm dead.
Yeah.
R.I.P. R.I.P. Quarrel.
Wow.
We'll see Quarrel Jr. soon.
Such a death, right? Flame.
We get Quarrel Jr. later on.
Right.
It's very nice. It's a nice little nod. I don't know if you remember when we get Quarrel Jr.
No.
But we do. Okay, I'll save it. I'll save it. I won't spoil the appearance of Quarrel Jr.
I've seen.
This is not a bit. This is not a joke.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
actually Quarrel Jr.
Yeah, I've seen sort of the later films multiple times, but I remember, like I said, when I bought the 50th anniversary Blu-ray set, that was the first time I saw like the older movies, the older Connery movies, the Moore movies, especially Dalton. I've never seen any of the Dalton movies before. I heard of them, just never seen them. But I started with Pierce. That was where I really started to pay attention to Bond, was the Pierce, and then onward. So yeah, it's doing this podcast is actually my second time. Will be my second time watching the movies, the older films, So yeah,
Nice.
there's a lot of stuff I don't really remember about them.
They're yeah, I watched. I started with Pierce Brosnan. We'll get to like which movie was your first movie. We'll get to that when we get to that movie,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
But my mom my mom made sure I knew all the Bonds.
yeah.
'Cause that was our bonding when I was a little kid.
Right.
Was James Bond movies. Whenever we go to a store, we'd come back with like a VHS
Mm.
of one Bond movie or another.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a bunch on VHS and a few on DVD, and of course the whole uh, Blu-ray set.
Yeah, yeah.
But first, Ursula Andress. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. She's super dumb,
Yeah.
and it's not explained in the movie at all.
Mm-hmm.
But in the book, that she has a backstory about being orphaned very young and never having gone to school and
Mm-hmm.
basically raising herself,
Yeah.
which is why she believes in dragons and is so dumb.
Yeah.
And we know what Bond likes. Gorgeous women with the brain capacity of a 5-year-old. That's
Mm-hmm.
what turns him on. It was a different time.
And now the one lady who just is head in, head over heels in love with him, is Miss Moneypenny, but she's the only one he refuses to cross that line with. And you and I was discussing discussing some of the reasons why. Maybe it's that he knows he's not in this position to, you know, settle down, and he loves her too much to hurt her, or he loves her to the point that if he knows he goes with her, he'll settle down, and he doesn't want to do that.
Hmm.
But either way, he's just not willing to push
It's
that.
like it's like reverse temptation,
Mm-hmm.
where you have all the 7-year itch and these guys who are married and they're settled down, and they see any babe
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, oh my god, hit that,
Yeah.
and then they get divorced.
Yeah.
Um, and with Bond, it's kind of the opposite because he is a perpetual swinger.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, I know that if I spend too much time with Moneypenny, I'm gonna want to abandon my swinging lifestyle and just stay with her forever,
Yeah.
and I can't do that. And in the commentary for Doctor No, Lois Maxwell says, it's archived, an archived interview. It's not
Yeah.
not original to the commentary, but she says that she always envisioned Bond and Moneypenny as actually having spent time together,
Mm-hmm.
like at a cabin in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but they ultimately decided that they couldn't continue it. She, because she knew he would break her heart,
Mm-hmm.
and he, because he knew he would break her heart, and because he might stay.
Yep.
Um, and we see a little bit of that later on when Moneypenny is reintroduced in Skyfall. There's a little bit of that here and there,
Mm-hmm.
but they've got a very good dynamic.
Mm.
Lois Maxwell and Sean Connery, and later Lois Maxwell and Roger Moore. They have. I hesitate to say progressive because it is James Bond, but a tit for tat. They tease each other, and there's such a strong romantic chemistry, and good for Lois Maxwell for having good romantic chemistry with Sean Connery and Roger Moore. Hey,
Yeah.
she doesn't choose favorites, but and for like being super hot, even like at the end of her tenure when she was like a little old lady, when Roger Moore was like in his 50s or 60s even, and she was just as old and was still like, looking good, looking good, Lois Maxwell, good lady. Yes.
Yeah. Where she recasting? What movie did she?
Timothy Dalton had his own Moneypenny, although I think she was only in The Living Daylights. I don't think she was in License to Kill,
Mm-hmm.
but she was recast to be younger like him.
Yeah.
Like Timothy Dalton was the first time it was like soft rebooted.
Mm-hmm.
They basically just comic book aged everyone down,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but he was still the same character. There's none of this. We'll get to it more when the time comes, but there's none of this. Oh, well, maybe James Bond is just a code name. Derp, 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 derp. It's
Yeah.
not. But, and then she was recast again in Goldeneye.
Yeah, which
As
is my money penny. She was, oh,
yeah,
Samantha Bond.
she's pretty.
Yeah. Um.
And then she got a tan in Skyfall.
Yeah.
She got
And she's the
that's
only.
part of the song.
And Naomi Harris is the only money penny who is not head over heels. Like, she has chemistry. She has, you know what, we could do this, but it's the reverse. Like, Bond will go for her, but she'll like, nah.
She's like, wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
I've got enough STDs.
So then, okay, so in the last podcast, we tried to tackle the commentary on what Bond could be like going forward in terms of his ladies.
Okay, round 2.
Right.
Okay, ready.
I say one of the sort of, I mean, it's a good thing, the Me Too movement. It's a great thing, gets some of the scum out of Hollywood, like the Weinsteins and all those guys out, right? But
if you're just a file, you should be glad that Weinstein is gone. How many movies has he ruined?
yeah.
How many like 2.5-hour epics has he been like, make it 80 minutes? That friggin' guy.
And so, but collateral damage, there's always collateral damage in any sort of like movement, and I think one of the collateral damages in this movement is that people are hesitant to be sexy in the movies. Maybe, like, especially Twitter fingers now, where it's like, you can't have, it's like, why does she have to have such a skimpy outfit in that scene? It's like, because the scene calls for her to be sexy, why not, I mean, we did see a little bit of toning down in the Craig movies before the movement, but can we see, especially after Craig is done and the next Bond comes around, the next group of filmmakers take over, like, do we foresee less womanizing Bond?
I don't foresee that.
Uh-huh.
And I think that the Craig movies, for better and worse, at some points, have done a lot of legwork in building the character in ways that the previous movies have already built the character, but they did it in a much more subtle and over time kind of way.
Right.
But the Craig movies, kind of have to do the Christopher Nolan hitting you over the head until even the cheap seats get it. No offense to Christopher Nolan, just saying that his movies are dumb movies for smart people or smart movies for dumb people. But that's what the Craig movies have done. They've not hit the reset button, but reaffirmed the character of James Bond, why he does what he does, who he is. So I think that they can get away with Bond being Bond because it fits his character and it's not just audience escapism, even though like that is a perfectly reasonable reason for that. And another part of it is that Bond is just immune to that kind of thing. I think that Bond is a character who gets, for lack of a better term, grandfathered in of like, it is unacceptable for some characters to do this.
Yeah.
Bond, we're not talking about you, Bond.
Yeah.
We love you, Bond. Never change. Bond, and we'll see. Phoebe Waller-Cates, Fleabag, is doing on not saying that sounded like, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
She's doing a rewrite on the Bond 25 script, which will mark the first time a James Bond movie has been written by a woman, even at least partially. And I can't imagine that she, or just anyone, would go to a Bond story and go, what if he didn't have sex with this woman? Because that's not what he does.
Right.
he is horny. He has needs. No, no, that's gross. But it's just part of his character.
Mm-hmm.
He's like like Duke Nukem. Like if they did a Duke Nukem where he wasn't like a horny toad,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be
Mm-hmm.
weird. Um, and Bond, whether he gets it or not, is always after it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've seen that Bond movies are still doing sexy babes.
Yep. Yep.
Like we saw Monica Bellucci being outrageously sexy in like her 4 minute role in Spectre,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, where she has no purpose. Maybe the script was rewritten so many times that her role was just reduced a million times.
Yep.
But she has no purpose but to be sexy
Mm.
and have sex with Bond.
Yep.
And like in a Bond movie, it's not a sin. I mean, Monica Bellucci is in Spectre just to be gorgeous and have sex with Bond.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, that is, and I guess like the hip thing there is that she's, much much closer to Bond's age, um, which has sometimes been a little bit not of a problem
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not judgy in that way,
Mm-hmm.
but has raised some eyebrows with the more conservative, but he's too old.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a thing that we get judgy at.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, if you're going to judge that, then, like, what if it's an older woman and a younger man? Like, you're going to judge that too? Like, everyone's on the up and up. Everyone knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. There's no laws are being broken. Um, but that's a whole other
Yeah.
can of worms. It shouldn't be a can of worms. It should like so what? Who cares?
Yeah.
But you know, it's Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Bond's gonna bond.
Yeah.
He's gonna bond with all the ladies he can. That's what he does. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, hopefully, cross fingers.
I mean the most I can see is like you know, the babes will be like, "Hey, what about me?"
Yeah.
And I'll be like, "Oh, all right, gotta get back to work. Oh no, London is calling. I gotta go save the queen."
Or what they'll probably do is, I guess, let the women be a lot more in charge of their own sexuality, where they may make the move.
Yeah, no more Thunderball date rape
Yeah.
moment. We'll get to that when we get to Thunderball, but it's like the single cringiest moment in all of James Bond for me isn't Thunderball.
I mean, all the women. There's some women in the previous Bond movies that initiated,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's not new. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things where, like you mentioned, he's sort of grandfathered in, where it's like it's expected.
Yeah, and like even though they're my people, the angry Twitter social mob is just gonna, they're gonna get upset at everything. They're gonna find a way to get upset no matter what anyone does.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, let's let them. They're not, they're people who think that they're affecting change by typing stuff down on their keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
When really the whole point of Twitter is to keep you from affecting change by letting you type stuff down on your keyboard.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't need to call my congressman. I can use a hashtag instead.
Mm-hmm.
You're so brave.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Dr. No himself. Just like Ursula, Honey Rider doesn't show up until the third act of the movie. You hear about it. That could be effective. I think that was sort of like I was mentioning in the last podcast we did, where it's like that can be an effective tool to sort of amp up your villain. It's like he's mentioned. Yeah, you never see him. You just hear about all the crazy things about him, and then you finally do the reveal. The downside to that is like you better show some. He better show up. It's like, oh shit! Now I get what the whole hype is. Which sometimes it's not the case. It's like, this is the guy I've been hearing about, man. Right?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely elements of both of that here, where you just have to. It depends on how much you're willing to go with it
Hmm.
that you can accept, his funny metal hands.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays if you show someone Doctor No, and it's building up to who this Doctor No is, and then when you finally see Doctor No revealed, they'll be like, "What?" But as I mentioned before, is like whenever I'm watching an older movie, I try to put myself in that state of mind. Like, okay, would this be amazing to see back then? Right? You have to forgive it for its technical limitations, or just maybe just what people thought was scary back then is not what people think is scary right now. You know, we went through a whole phase where it was all about torture porn was our horror films. Luckily, it's come back around where we look at torture porn as it's like, yeah, it's exactly what it is, torture porn. It's not scary. It's just like
It's just
sensation.
nasty.
Yeah, sensationalism. It's like, oh, that guy's head just totally got cut off. Like, wow, but it's not scary anymore. It's not shocking. So we are back to let's scare the shit out of you by giving you that creepy factor that scared the shit out of us back then, right? So it's like coming full circle. So the villain thing is like, okay, maybe back in the '60s when they saw Doctor No, it was like, holy crap, that guy's menacing, right? Uh, so I had to give it a pass on that level, but yes, he is a goofy looking dude with metal arms.
He's in many ways, Doctor No is a prototype Bond movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a proper Bond movie, but it throws a lot at the wall and says, we'll refine it later.
Mm-hmm.
And Doctor No is definitely a prototype Bond villain.
Yeah.
Because he does check all the boxes.
Right.
He's got a weird deformity, metal hands, check. He wears a funny clothes. He's got like that weird plastic suit, check.
Mm-hmm.
And the famous, Mandarin collar, which we would see later in Blofeld. Um, and he's got an exotic lair that's done with a 1962 budget of the first movie,
Mm-hmm.
unproven franchise, but it still looks wild. He's got the giant fish
Mm-hmm.
in the TV screen. So
Yeah.
like, check.
Yeah.
Um,
What was that
he
supposed? That was
gets,
supposed to be a TV screen, or was it a magnifying glass or
I
something?
think it was just supposed to be a window.
Yeah, it was like, and were
I
the
mean,
fishes that big, or is it supposed to be like, okay, this is a magnifying glass situation to make the fish look bigger than they are?
I could not say.
I don't know.
I don't know. You just got to go with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He has dinner with Bond. Check.
Yep.
It's and then he dies in a nasty way. He gets like killed by that coolant. Check.
Yeah.
Um, does it do anything beyond that? No. But it sets it up, and it's like, okay, this is the starting off point from which all other Bond movies to this day will build off of.
Right, right.
So you can't fault something for setting the precedent.
Mm-hmm.
You can go, it pales in comparison to later editions,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to start somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, it's as far as his plot, I mean, it's one of those things too, where it's often parodied, where the villain has some outrageous plot. We don't know what it is. Like I mentioned before, like I didn't know exactly what his deal was. What did he want? I mean,
It's something about sabotaging a U.S. shuttle launch
right,
for no particular reason, just because he works for the bad guy organization.
right. Which is Spectre, which is the first appearance
Yep.
of Spectre.
And kind of an early example of like a film having an an arc villain.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, because Spectre plays a part in From Russia with Love and Thunderball and You Only Live Twice.
Mm-hmm.
And then, later on, sort of. And they can drop out.
And what was the deal too? I think they lost the right to Spectre or something like that for
Yeah.
a long period of time.
It has to do with the Thunderball lawsuit.
Yeah.
Just a whole mess. We'll get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So first appearance of Spectre. Also the fact that you get the continuation of that movie, which is funny, right? So you had this movie, Doctor No, then From Russia with Love. Then you took a break from the Spectre storyline with Goldfinger, and it came back with the movie after Goldfinger, right? Like
Yes.
this. So you had the Daniel Craig movies. You
Same
had,
pattern.
yeah, it was Casino Royale, then Quantum of Solace, then they took a break with Skyfall, then they brought it back with Spectre.
Mm.
I don't know if the next movie will continue the storyline. Who knows? But it was like, wow, it's and I see Skyfall as Daniel Craig's Goldfinger. I see that on the same level. It's like,
In that they're both critically adored box office successes that are overrated.
oh my god!
I went there.
I take it you didn't
We'll-
like
and
Goldfinger,
we'll
huh?
get there. No, I like Goldfinger very much. I do think that it is overrated,
Yeah,
but I do like it very much. But we'll get to it.
yeah, yeah.
Why I think Guy Hamilton is like a speck in the shade of
Terrence
Terrence Young.
Young. Right,
But we'll get there.
right. So yeah, so you had it was one of those movies where I was watching Doctor No, where I was like, wait, am I not paying attention? Because uh, it was like a series of things happening, and I'm like, I'm not following or whatever, and maybe the story's just so simplistic that it's not trying to make sense. It's just like,
It's a little bit of all of that.
yeah,
Like the first half of the movie has like this big plot of like trying to find Doctor No. Where is he?
yeah,
Without even thinking about his plan. Like his plan is not important at that
mm-hmm.
stage of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they find him, he has a plan just because he has to have a plan. Otherwise, why is Bond even looking for him in the first place?
Yeah,
But his plan is not important,
mm-hmm.
and it's different from the books. In the books, he's working with the communists. He's working with Smersh. And for the movie, it's funny. They actually thought for the movie that having communists be the bad guys had been played out by '62.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It was so big in the '50s
Mm-hmm.
that they were like, well, let's just bring in Spectre instead, since they're from the books, and we're going to use them anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like kind of have like a preview of that, and that is pretty funny considering that in the future Bond would be like stereotyped as having fought Russians forever,
Mm-hmm.
even though he only fights Russians in a couple of movies.
Right.
But it's he has a plot, he has a evil plot because he has to have an evil plot, but it's never a driving force in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The driving force is finding him and then stopping him.
Yeah, yeah.
What he wants to do, not important. He's the bad guy. Don't worry about it.
So, again, this being the beginning of the movie, there's a lot of tropes that were introduced, but some that haven't started yet, or hinted at. One of it being sort of the opening, sort of title sequence.
Oh yeah.
Not as flashy as the title sequence that will precede it, but nonetheless, it's prototype. It does have the barrel, downsights barrel look, which wasn't Connery. It was maybe a stuntman or something.
Yeah,
like
it was some stuntman. I mean, he has a name, like people know who he is, but I personally do not.
Yeah. But when you have, and it's no opening song, even though it does have a title song, just not one that is refrained throughout the film. It was a hit song in the '60s by a Jamaican band called Baron Lee and the Dragonaires called Jamaica Jump Up.
That's what they play during the dance, the nightclub.
Yeah.
The dancing guy.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, we mentioned
Dancing
that too.
guy.
Weird. Which, as I mentioned before, I didn't notice him while I was doing the watch, but I did notice him while we were doing the behind the scenes and talking about
He
Jamaica
should
Jump.
Dr. No.
That guy was nuts off his rockers, man.
If that guy's still alive, they got to find him and put him in the next movie, which is also set in Jamaica, at least partially.
Yeah.
And have him dance in the exact same way. Like anyone who's listening to this knows exactly who we're talking about. And if they don't, when they watch it, they will know exactly who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, that guy. He's the hero we deserve.
So yeah, what was I saying? Oh, so the opening sequence didn't have it had silhouettes of ladies, but they weren't scantily
And there were
clad.
also guys
Yeah,
dancing,
right.
just silhouettes of dancers.
Yeah, so it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the elaborate things that we've known. We get to know Bond for. There's no cold open. It just starts with the theme, um, uh, and it has the credits and the silhouette of the dancers.
The
Um,
cool dots.
yeah,
A lot of
very
dots.
60s, very psychedelic.
Very
Um,
60s. Very pre-psychedelic. It's
a psychedelic was started 66 or something like that. 66,
I
67.
guess around then.
Oh,
But it is like it does evoke that,
yeah.
like I mean psychedelia came from somewhere and it came from like I don't know what that style would be called
Mm,
of like the crazy dancing epileptic lights.
yeah, yeah.
But like they're cool
Mhm.
and they're not like stuff that we'd get in other Bond movies.
Mhm.
But yeah, that whole opening sequence is really weird and really cool. Um, and then the way it segues into, you know, everything that happens in the first act of the movie
Mm,
is, I think it's really cool.
yeah.
But it's definitely if, for people who've seen other Bond movies, it's jarring because you know it's not like anything else from the series.
Mhm.
But again, it's the prototype. It's the starting off point. They're like, well, we had an opening sequence. What do we do in the future? Well, what if we put something before the opening sequence, a cold open?
Yeah.
And then what if we make the opening sequence a song that we'll write specifically for the movie, and we'll have dancing girls, and they'll be
Mhm.
naked, and
Mhm.
it'll be hot, and there'll be guns, and they'll be phallic, and it'll be crazy.
Mhm. um.
Some phallic guns in those opening sequences.
Yeah.
A lot of this going on.
Yeah. um. So yeah, that the opening, and then of course one of the mainstays of Bond is the theme song.
Oh yeah.
Now, I was under the impression, but I had to look it up. Well, you had to tell me, and then I looked it up. I was under the impression that it was
John
Barry,
Connery.
John Barry, who did the theme, because he does he composed the score for the film, but the theme was actually composed by Monty Norman. And he said there was a sort of controversy about that, where
Yeah, John Barry had claimed ownership of the song.
mm-hmm,
Probably because he had arranged it so many times for other movies,
mm-hmm,
that he kind of was just like, "Yeah, I wrote it,
mm-hmm,
whatever, you know." And then Monty Norman was like, "I wrote it, dude." Uh, oh yeah, well, take me to court then. He's like, well, "Okay, well, I will, and then I'll win." And then he did, and he won.
yeah.
So Monty Norman wrote it. Sean Barry did a lot with it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but it is a Monty Norman composition.
Yep. And it's I say, and I was mentioning this on the last podcast, the Lost podcast, that music, especially nowadays, for the films, not a lot of iconic scores have been created in the last decade or so. Um, we did mention two of them, which is Avengers. Thankfully, has a very iconic scores. Thankfully, because the movies were great, to back up that score. We get a piece of the score in Age of Ultron, but for the most part, it was first Avengers movie, then Infinity War, then Endgame that really solidified that score. And of course, Pirates of the Caribbean, that Hans Zimmer uh, score, even though technically the first movie was done by Klaus Bedalt or whatever, but it was produced by Hans, and I'm sure Hans
Uh,
had a hand in forming that score. Kind of like how the Wonder Woman theme it's really Hans, but uh, uh, Rupert Grayson, who took over scoring the Wonder Woman movie, used it. So yeah, not a lot of iconic score have been created in the last decade or so, but uh, you know,
but
earlier you had the Bond films, you had Star Trek score, you had the Back to the Future score, Star Wars. Oh my God, Star Wars. John Williams pretty much created the template for iconic scores. Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Superman. Uh, uh, what else? Jurassic Park,
E.T.
E.T. You hear those scores,
Been around.
instantly recognizable, including
Jaws.
Jaws, and also Will Robinson movie, Lost in Space.
He did Lost in Space?
Yeah, he did
Oh, damn.
the television show. He created that theme. It was like, oh
Nice.
shit. But yeah, James Bond theme is one of those themes that are so iconic that reverberated through pop culture to the point where it's referenced in other spy movies that kind of rearrange their theme, not to sound like James Bond, but you get that inflection a lot, and I think that's how influential that theme has been, and still to this day is being used in the movies. And to think, if you listen to the original, it does have the sort of 60s ding 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 ding, but they managed to kind of like remake that a little bit so it doesn't sound so dated when you hear it in the newer Bond movies.
Yeah, I mean it's a timeless piece of music. It's so adaptable. So you just change the instrumentation a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like the theme has not changed very much at all in the past 50 something years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know math, but you put some fuzz on the guitar and boom, now it's modern.
Yep.
Yep. You put some drum, you raise the drums in the mix and put the bongos down a little bit. Boom! Now it's so much more modern. There's not a whole lot you have to do to to make that song sound hip, because it's very hip. It has been.
Mm-hmm.
That song was the epitome of cool, and it still is, because James Bond is the coolest character in fiction.
Yeah, and then one thing I noticed that some later composers did, especially David Arnold, was to take the Bond theme and mixed it into whatever the song theme was. It kind of like combined the two.
Oh yeah.
And it, for the most part, usually works.
Oh yeah. And like we'll get to David Arnold. I think he is the best composer that has done James Bond movies. I think that he is. I think that his scores are pretty gosh darn near perfect. But he's also got a different style,
Right.
but incorporates like the history of James Bond into his style, and makes it new and retro and like a timeless classic, like James Bond himself.
Yep.
It's like I don't know if any piece of music can be so closely identified with a character as James Bond and his theme.
It's one. Another thing I mentioned in the last one. It's one of those things like when you grow up, you automatically just know Happy Birthday, or you automatically know Santa Claus, and know about all these things that I feel like you just knew it at birth. You don't know, you can't remember where you learned it, who taught you about it. It's that with Bond, where it's like, even if you've never seen a Bond movie, I'm sure you can go to someone who's never seen a Bond movie, play the track for them, and they're like, oh yeah, that's from James Bond, right? And they're like, yep. Have you ever seen it? Nope, not a stitch of film ever seen.
How crazy is that there are people who've never seen a James Bond movie?
Well, I'm sure there are people out there.
Oh, there are plenty.
Yeah.
So weird, though.
Yeah, no. I feel the same way, too, when people talk about, I've never seen a Marvel movie. It's like, shut up!
Yeah. Like, not even one? Like, you didn't even start it and then decided you didn't like it and then stop? Like, if that happens, like, that's okay. Like, if you just watch, like I knew someone who had never seen one and then started watching Thor Ragnarok and was like, I hate this. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, you jumped into the deep end.
Yeah.
Like, you went diving without a net.
Yeah, you gotta learn to
Yeah,
swim first, buddy.
yeah, you gotta learn to walk before you learn to run. But we'll see. We'll see if she ever goes back around to it.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's Bond, the theme, even like Bond himself is so iconic that even if you've never seen a movie, you just see someone dressed in a tux
Yeah,
with a pistol. It's like, who are you trying to be, James Bond? It's like, how do you know? You've never seen a James Bond movie. I don't know. It's just iconography. It's just ingrained into pop culture. It's just,
yeah, and Bond movies themselves, like, it's on some special feature of some something on that Blu-ray box set that we both have. But when you see a James Bond movie, like, you walk into the theater or put on the DVD one way,
mm-hmm.
and then when it's done, like, you have a swagger
Yeah.
that you're like, man, I wish I could be like this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't, but you try to hold on to it for as long as you can, where you're just like, I'm like James Bond now. I'm super cool. Everything bounces off me. I'm gonna kill you and then sleep with your maid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's it's very male.
Yeah.
It's very whatever chromosome we have, uh, it gets us right there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, it's undeniable that it happens, and I think that's also a big part as to why Bond has continued to persist all this time.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So that was Doctor No. It's again for the time a good movie.
Holds up.
Yeah, it holds up definitely camera wise, cinematography wise. Maybe not so much plot wise. It was a little bit thin on plot. Um, Definitely holds up in the beauty department in terms of the ladies.
Ah, yeah, we are boys.
um, so
I feel like we need a female co-host just to, like, slap us around a little bit.
yeah, I'm sure the female co-host would be right there with us too. It's like, oh yeah, that girl was hot. I was like, oh yes.
Yeah. As you continue watching this series, you're going to see Mark and I, like, regress to our base selves and just be like, yeah, she was hot.
Yep.
Yeah, she was a babe. It is an unavoidable side effect of watching this many James Bond movies.
Yep.
It just happens, and we apologize to everybody.
So yeah, it's a good start to the franchise. The movies will get better. Some might be worse.
Oh, some will definitely be worse.
But for the most part, they've been on a quality-wise upward trajectory. Even if they're bad in terms of plot, I would say that their production value have always been on the upswing.
Usually, but we'll get there.
But I would have to, like I said, I haven't seen most of the movies more than once, so maybe when I get to what movies you're thinking of, then I'll be like, oh yeah, you're right on that one.
Oh, I'm thinking of a few.
But yeah, it's James Bond has been around for a long time, and we'll get to all of them as the weeks go by. But yes, good start, Doctor No. I would definitely give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
And so on forth. So alright, so that would bring us to the end of the podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Marky Tundra. You can find me at Instagram at Pop Culture Galaxy, and on Facebook at Pop Culture Galaxy as well. Where can they find you, Zach?
You can find me on Twitter at my name, Zach Wojner. You can find me on Instagram at
Zach Woj.
something Zach Woj.
Yeah.
You can read some of my articles and interviews on ScreenRant.com.
Yep. And of course, hit that subscribe button hit the notification bell to know when we
Ring the
drop new
bell.
videos. Give us a thumbs up and comment
Was it
down below. Let me know.
push notifications?
Yeah,
I don't know what that is, but like do it.
yeah. Comment down below. Let me know what you think of Doctor No. What's your favorite Bond film? Who's your favorite Bond? Who's your favorite Bond villain? Who's your
Your
favorite
favorite babe,
Bond girl?
Bond babe.
um, there's been
If you say Tanya Roberts, you're wrong.
there's been a lot of Bond girls,
I kid Tanya Roberts. You're beautiful. You're an amazing person.
including M herself was a Bond girl. I think she is the Bond girl of Skyfall. We'll talk about it when we get
Oh
to Skyfall.
yeah, I thought you meant like she was in one of the Sean Connery movies. I was
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah.
When? Where?
Yeah.
Did she have the same haircut?
Yeah, right. But I think based on what our definition of a Bond girl is in terms of how the Bond girl interacts with Bond, her place in the plot, especially how usually the Bond girl ends the third act with James Bond himself, that mold quite fittingly fit M in Skyfall, which we'll get to. But
We'll get there.
yeah. So yeah, let
Maybe
us.
I'll have a beard by then.
Maybe you'll have what?
A beard.
Right. You trying to get
We'll
that?
have-
You trying to get it all?
Nah, I'm just spitballing.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be a while. So
Yeah.
who knows where we'll be at in our lives?
Yep. 24 weeks is a long time. Well, that would be 22 weeks because this 22nd film, right?
Yeah,
Skyfall.
something like that.
Is it? No, it's the 23rd. Because it's
yes,
Skyfall
you're
and then Spectre.
Yes.
So 23 weeks. All right. So that should be it. Until next time, folks. I want to say peace.
Indeed. That was good. Glad we got a second chance at that. I think it turned out better than the first one.
Mm-hmm.